Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're learning Masechta Sanhedrin Daf Nun Zayin. We are going to begin on the bottom of Nun Vav Amud Beis. Tana ben Menashe. So we've been learning, and we've been introduced in yesterday's daf to the Sheva Mitzvahs from Noach, and there's actually a dispute whether or not dinim are considered to be part of the seven, maybe because at Mara, we were given the mitzvah of dinim, as well as Shabbos and Kibbut Av Ha'im. So maybe, therefore, how is it that was given as part of the seven was given later on? So there's different opinions, and we continue with Tana ben Menashe. So Eve Darish, the Yitzav, which we learned out, that if you'll Hanach Nami, then you should be chayiv for all of them. So if you don't make this drasha of a tzav, then how do you know all the others? Says Rashi, if you do darshan tzav, then you can also include dinim and berachas Hashem. But if you don't, then how do you know these other the Sheva Mitzvos? Well, darish. So if he doesn't darshan, then how do we understand everything else? The tzav. Hani kolchan v'chad b'api nafshik siva. Actually, each one is written onto itself. As we continue to Nun Zayin Aleph, it says that they destroy the earth. And what does that mean? Whenever it mentions destruction, referring to Avera of Ereva and idol worship. Devar Ereva Shnamar Kihishkas Kol Basar Estarko, that we basically destroyed based on Kol Basar, the proper way of living, because we're Isaac and Ereva. Maybe you'll do this destructive act. So we already see Gilui Rayos and Shvichas Damim are included, and Rashi says, "Mid'anish alayhu," since there's a punishment, Shema min ifkud alayhu, they must have been commanded. The Iduch says Rashi, "Man de darish v'tzav." So then, what do you do with this pasuk? So says Rashi, "Armelchaz hara mivitzav v'huzar min adam harishain v'gabi dor hamabel or chayu." Megali or hadiach alman enshu, says the Gemara. V'idach or chayhu deka megali. They're just revealing that which is the norm over there. Shvichas damim nechsev shevich adam dam ha'adam v'gaimer. If you kill someone, you'll be killed. You'll be punished. V'idach katalayhu hu deka megali. It's just telling you the notion of killing. Says Rashi, misum, of how to kill. Well, oyom huzru mitzav. The actual azhara is from the tzav. However, it's true, we're taught that there is a death penalty. Gezel nechsev kiyerk esam nasatu chemes koil, that you can take these vegetations, not something stolen. Yom Rav Levi kiyerk esev lo kiyer git gana. You can take from esev because it belongs to no one. However, not a gina, not a garden, because that belongs to someone, so you're stealing. It's just coming to tell you that he is now allowed to eat meat, in which he wasn't allowed to before. It says Rashi, Adam Rishon uhuter loy basar b'achila el tzavim ve'ilanois. Adam Rishon was a vegetarian; he was not allowed to eat meat. Skipping a few lines in Rashi. V'husru al Eber Menachai, he was warned on Eber Menachai, ma'oichel toichelu. V'lomadcha defil eincha b'misa el shenafel memenu Eber me'elav, that even if a limb comes from it, v'loisachlana, don't eat it. Uvo b'nei noach v'hitu lahem v'hamas v'echol. Fine. So Eber Menachai nechsev ach baser b'nafshe dam loisochelu. V'idach ahula mishrei shrotzim hudasa, that they can eat shrotzim. Sirus dechsev shirtzu b'archatz v'rovu bo. V'idach lebracha ba'alma It's just telling you that they're going to procreate. It's just a stam savah. Amar Papa Aimer Beirav al Sholosh Mitzvahs ben Noach Nerag. Gesher Simon. On 3 things, Bnei Noach will be killed. And we're going to see not all 7, but only 3. It's worth noting that the Marsha says that Rashi is chaylik with Taisus. Rashi says, not that it's mutter mesa me'aleha, that if it dies by itself, to eat, but Taisus says, beferish, it's mutter to eat mesa me'aleha. So it's a machlokus between Rashi and Taisus, mesa me'aleha, whether you're allowed to eat from this. Rashi clearly says that it's not mutter. Okay, so al gili arayis v'al shvichas dam v'al berachas Hashem. When it comes to these 3 averos, only by these 3 will Bnei Noach be killed. So Mask Rav Sheishis Bishlam Shvichas dam. I understand that. It says shevich dam ha'adam v'gaimer. It says clearly, if you kill, you'll be killed. El hanach menalahu. How do we know the others? If we want to learn these 2 from Shvichas Damim, feel kulanami. Want to learn everything from Shvichas Damim. Imishum demisravi meishish. If we learn out from ishish, avodas kachavim nami isravu meishish. So that's also derived avodas kachavim, worshiping idols from that source. Amrav Sheshis Amri Beirav al Arvim Mitzvahs ben Noach Nerag. It's not 3; it's actually 4. V'al avodas kachavim ben Noach Nerag. And one of them includes not just Gil Arayis Shvichas Dam Berachas Hashem, but also Avodas Kachavim, also idol worship. Vasanya. Okay, I just want to make sure I got that. Okay. Vasanya. Be'avodas Kachavim, when it comes to idol worship or avodas kachavim, devarim shebeised in sheisoma misal lehen ben Noach musal lehen. When it comes to idol worship, the matters in which based in would kill someone for worshiping, so too Bnei Noach would be musar. Azhara in misal lo. It's mashma only azhara, but they wouldn't be killed for avodah zara. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak azhara shalahen zuhi misasan. No, their warning is their misa. Says Rashi, Koimer kol azhara the tanad be Gabi ben Noach zuhi misa shalhem. That's their death. Do daik behu tanala misti misa Gabi chayvi misa. So haris v'shein behen misa. Okay. In other words, it doesn't mean that they're not killed, but their azhara is their misa. Rav Huna, Rabbi Huda v'kul hudamidi the Rab Amri al sheva mitzvahs min nayir. No, it's not true. It's not just 3, not just 4. It's all 7. Goy writes b'chada. When it comes to Goy writes, it's bechada, says Rashi. V'huadin l'kuhu. So by Gilui Arayis, 1 second. Goli Rachmana bechada. Let me read that again. Goli Rachmana bechada v'huadin l'kuhu. The Torah specifies by one of them, namely by Shvichas Damim, that if you spill blood, your blood will be spilled, and therefore we do tackle enough from Shvichas Damim, that just like by Shvichas Damim, your Chai Misa, and Akam's Chai Misa, so to all the Sheva Mitzvahs. V'udin l'kuhu. Gezel ben Noach Nerag. Now, interestingly enough, among the Sheva Mitzvahs includes Gezel, stealing. And that's a capital offense. V'asanya al Gezel ganav v'gazal v'chein nifas tayir v'chein k'ayotze behen. When it comes to all these things of stealing, as well as taking a fas tayar, woman in prison who during war, they're punished. Kuti b'kuti v'kuti b'yisrael aser. A kuti cannot take a kuti woman. A kuti cannot take a yid. It's aser. Focus on the word aser. However, Yisrael, if the Yisrael steals b'kuti, right, or hifas toar, mutter, v'im isa nistichayev. The l'chayra, it should say the word chayev. Now, why is the hifas toar under the category of gezel and not arayos, which is kind of interesting? And the answer is because you're stealing someone else's wife. Very fascinating. That's l'chayra. The reason why Yifas Tayar is in this category of Gezel. It's not a Gil Rice issue as much as it's Gezel. You're stealing someone's wife. It's like kidnapping. So Mishum de Kabbalah Misli Seifa Yisrael B'Kusi Mutter. It says a Yisrael with regard to a kusi is mutter. Says Rashi. Doloi Sashaik Esreyachaksiv V'Kusi Midrabanan Ikoman de As Mishum Chil Hashem. Now, technically, stealing from a yid is also. A yid who steals from a kusi is technically mutter from Gezel. It's still also because of Chil Hashem. And therefore, because the Sefer which says that it's mutter, so Tanaresha Aser. But it doesn't mean Aser and not Chayiv. No, you are Chayiv Misa. A Gezel, an Akum who steals is Chayiv Misa. Hakol Hecha de Isle Chayuva, anytime it's a Chayav Misti Katani. The Katani Reisha al Shvichas Damim, when it comes to murder. Kusi, Bekusi Misra Chayiv. If a Kusi kills a Yid or a Kusi, he's Chayiv. Yisrael Bekusi Potter. Now over here, it says the word Potter. The Hasam Heichel Misti. How else could it say? Lisni Aser Umutter? Should it say that it's Aser to murder and it's mutter to murder? No, it can't say mutter as opposed to potter. Vasani kusi roi behema daka umal vo maridin. You don't bring them up, but you also don't drop them into a pit. Says Rashi, loyum hachal lavdavka iserd nakat el mishum seifa. But there's a din of lo malin vo maridin. Lo malin oisam in a bore. You don't need to save them. Lasiam in a misa. However, don't throw them into a pit. It says the parentheses of din za'enu noyig ki botlu. Okay, it's an interesting little piece that's thrown into the Rashi. Ki yotzeba gezel mahi. What would be its comparison to gezel? When it comes to workers in a vineyard, which is a form of stealing. Now, poy b'kerem amos. Ibishas gemar malacha heterhu. They're allowed to take food because they're working there. Ilam b'shas gemar malacha gezel malihu. If not, then it's mamash stealing. The question is, what is the din when a person takes pachas m'sheva pruta? Hachi kusi b'yisrael aser habar mechilhu. Why would it be a kusi who steals pachas m'sheva pruta from a yid? A yid is bar mechilwa. So he'd be moichel pachas m'sheva pruta, and the kusi should be potter. You're right. Nehid the baser hachi machale. You're right that the yid will be moichel, but sar b'shaitim lay slay. Certainly, there's still tsar that he caused by stealing pachas m'sheva pruta, even though he may be moichel, but he's still going to be chayiv for the anguish, the tsar that he caused. Kusi b'kusi ki yotz behen kivan dalad b'nei mechilin hu. However, a kusi to steal from another kusi pachas m'sheva pruta, there's no din mechila. So therefore, gezel malihu. Therefore, it's considered like regular stealing. Holding back your employee's wages. Now, kusi b'kusi aser. Yisrael b'kusi mutter. Yisrael could tactically hold back the wages of a kusi. Ki yaitze b'yafas tayar. Mahi, what does that mean? Ki yasser abdimi amar belazar amar chanina ben noyach shiyachid shivcha al-avdoi. If a ben noyach that designated a shivcha for his servant, uval, and he has tashmish with her, nerag aleha, that's considered to be a capital offense. Nerag alav, fine. Ki yaitze boy the shvichas damim lo. You tell me by shvichas damim not Tanya. Aimer baya imishkachas. Imishkachas we find this sign ben Rav Yonas and ben Shoylhi. This time Yonas and ben Shoyl Aimer right of acha chaver l'hargav yochal atzil v'echad me'avarv lo hitzel nerag. Let's say you have someone chasing after you to kill you, and you could just turn around and like shoot him in the leg, but instead, and that could have been enough. Yochel hatzil be'echad me'avarv lo hitzil, which basically means you killed the guy. Nun zayim beis neragalav. So according to him, you are chayiv. So says Rashi, Hainu ki yotzebo the shvichas damim havi karev lahater. It's almost you would think it's allowed because he's chasing after you. Venu mutter. Kuti b'kuti b'Yisrael chayiv. If a kuti would do this to a kuti or to a yid, he'd be chayiv, because even though he was being pursued, he could have prevented that person from killing you by just, let's say again, shooting him in the leg or something. The fact that you killed him is considered like murder. V'chein yisrael b'Yisrael. Of Yisrael b'kuti potter. If a Yisrael would kill a kus who's running after you, even though you could have saved him, your potter. Yonasan of a rabbanan pligal yomer heter gomerhu v'leika kiyotzbo. You can't say it's a kiyotzbo because according to him it's totally mutter. Ashkav Rav Yaakov Bar Acha dahavi ksib sefer agadata the Beirav, who is writing this sefer agadata. Ben noich nereg b'dayin echad v'eid echad shaloi b'hasra. That when it comes to a ben noich, they'll be killed even with one judge, one witness, even without warning. However, that witness needs to be a man, not a woman. They feel karoiv, even a relative. Even on a fetus, that if which is a pretty unbelievable thing, when it comes to abortions, apparently, says Rashi, Hiko Isha, if you hit a woman, the Yotziladan, and the woman has miscarriage, Naragalan, Yisrael Ad Shiatzil Aver Oilam. So it's an interesting idea about abortion, that when a Yid harms the fetus, you're potter. However, if you harm, this debate Vlados, you don't have to, but however, if a Yid, a guy does it, then he's going to be chayiv. Minahani Mili, Amr Yehuda and Merkra, Achas, I'm going to go after you, which is a fil b'dayin echad. Miyad kol chaya, from all living. And fil shul b'hasra, even without being warned. At Rishenu miyad adam a fil b'eid echad, even with one witness. Miyad ish will miyad, it says miyad ish, which come to exclude will miyad isha, that it can't be a woman. Achav a fil kara, it could be even a relative. Mishum Rabbi Yishmael Omer afal yubodim, even a fetus. My time of the Rabbi Yishmael. They say shayvich dam adam ba'adam dam yishafich. Ezu adam, who is a person shu bit adam. What a chap. Shayvich dam ha'adam bit adam. So who is bit adam? What adam is bit adam? Havi Omer is that uber shibimei imo. It's referring to a fetus. So you hear a bunch of people who are pro-abortion say, "Oh, it's just a clump of cells." No. It's also a human being. The Torah clearly calls this baby, this fetus, an Adam. It's someone who is Shevich Dam Ha'adam Bi Adam. You killed a person who is inside a person, which means you killed the fetus. So if you did that, you're Chayiv Misa by an Akum. Ezu, because this pasuk is referring to B'nai Noach. Ezu Adam Shu Ba'Adam Habi Ermer Zeh Uber Shebemei Imoy, which is unbelievable. But Tanakama, how about the Tanakama who say they be potter? So Tana de Menashe who the Emer Kol Misa Amur Levnei Noach Enu El Chenek. That when it comes to the death penalty for B'nai Noach, it's not saif like we said in yesterday's daf, but rather Chenek, strangulation. V'shadalei hai ba'adam a sefer dekra, and ba'adam is at the end of the pasuk. V'darish be'hachin. This is how they darish in the pasuk. Ba'adam dam yishafech. That the person who spilled blood, Ezu shvichas damim shel adam shehu begufa shel adam. What is the misa that you're going to give them that will remain beguf shel adam? Havi ermer zechenek. In other words, that the person will not have their blood spilled, but rather by strangulation, so their whole body remains intact. It can't be saif, which is not considered to be a misa, in which will be the damim shel adam will remain in the guf. Rather, obviously, saif, the person loses their blood. So, Masav Rav Hamnun of Ishaloi Mifkada, you're telling that a woman is not commanded on us. V'ksiv ki adaita v'man asher yitzava v'gaimer. Who ma'isel v'hum afarikla. Banav ladin. Beisai l'tzedakah. What does that mean? Says Rashi, Beiso hainu noshim. So, Amrle Rav Avi Sabu Rav Papa, Ema bas noyach shaharga lo taharik. Maybe a ben noyach, a bas noyach who kills won't be killed. Miyad ish lo miyad ish aksiv. from that pasuk. So Malay Hachi Amar Bihuda Shevich Dama Adam Michol Makoim. No, if you murder, even if it's a woman who murders, you're still chayiv. It's just saying is regarding testimony. So Ema Bas Nayach Shezinsa Lo Taharig. Maybe a Bas Nayach who's Mazana, who's engages in Gil Rayas is not killed, only a man. Al King Yazav Ish, Lo Isha. Amay Hachi Amar Bihuda V'hayu Ubasar Echad. Hadir Arvin Hu Kra. So that's more inclusive. Okay, let's look at question 4. Gana v'gezel v'chein yafas tayar v'chein kiyotz v'hen kusim Yisrael aser. My kamash montana b'kiyotz v'hen the gezel yafas tayar the kusim Yisrael aser. What is that? So b'gezel, it's coming to tell you what is kavish sachar. If you hold back your workers' wages, the yafas tayar Yisrael who is miyached shivcha kenainis le'eved ivri uba kusi oleha. So if, let's say, you're designated a shivcha for your eved ivri, and a kusi has tashmish with her, so then in that situation, then you would be chayiv. Okay, sounds like the case of like a shivcha charufa, in which you're not chayiv mis on that. But for an akum who would be boil, such a woman, they would be chayiv mis. Okay. Tanurban. Ish matam ish rabba says a kusim. It's coming to include goyim. Shemuz harim al arayis Yisrael. They have the same din of arayis. Ibaham b'hachanafka b'hasam nafka. We already went out from the pasuk. Lamor is igli arayis, which we saw in yesterday's daf. No hasam b'arayis did who? V'acham arayis did don. One is their arayis and one is our arayis. So what does that mean? Diktani seifa ba'al arayis Yisrael. If the akum is boil on an arayis of a yid, then yidin kedini b'dini Yisrael. Then he gets the same punishment as a yid. So my hilchah says Rav Nachman and Rabbi Boravu l'nisocha ela ve'edim v'hasra. That if he was boil Yisrael, so the only time you can punish the akum is with the same laws of Yisrael, which means you have to have proper witnesses, you have to have a court of 23, you have to have given him warning. So Migra Gra doesn't make sense. Why are we going easy with him? It's coming to tell you that the dinim are different when it comes to the nar marasa. Why? Says Rashi, Bal nar marasa need a maskila. We know that an akum who normally will get sayef or maybe chenek, he actually will get skila if he's boil nar marasa. Do did who leisel did daininan lahu, bedina didon aval eishes ish bedina did who daininan lahu. Okay, so when it comes to an actual thing which is illegal, so then you would follow the law and they would get sayef for chenek. But because there's no such concept of having tashmish with a nar marasa for an akum, so the fact that you would have tashmish with a nar marasa who is a yid, so then you'd be chayav the same death penalty, which would be skila. Vosanya, bal nar marasa need a skila. If again, as we said, punishment would be skila. Al eishes ish need a mechenek. However, if he's with a married woman, his punishment is chenek. Now, v'i bedina did who sayef who, I understand. But if you're telling me that we're going to follow our punishments, our punishment is sayef. It's not chenek. V'i bedina did who sayef who. Their punishment is sayef. So why are we giving them the punishment of chenek? So Rav Nachman Yitzchak, my eishasish tektani gigayin shenichnasul chuppah v'nivola. We're talking about she went into the chuppah, they haven't had beer yet. Did who leisel who dinainu. There's no such din to there's no punishment like that for an akum. And therefore, because of that, nina lahu bedina didon. They use our judgment, our punishment, which would be the punishment of chenek. Okay. Fine. The Tani Reb Chanina B'ulas Baal Yesh Lahen. They have a concept of B'ulas Baal, which they had Tashmish. However, and therefore they're like married when she had Bia. Nichnasul Chuppah V'Nivla Ein Lahen. Just going into a chuppah is nothing, and therefore there would be no punishment of Eishes Ish, because it's not Eishes Ish yet, because she never had relations with her husband, and therefore he wouldn't technically be chayiv. However, if he did this with a Jewish woman who already went to chuppah, so then he would be chayiv the death penalty that would be given to a yid. Tani Rav Yochanan. Kol ervish bebeis shel yisoma misan have been noich musolen. Ein beis shel yisoma misan ein ben noich musolen. Dibra Meir. V'cham oimrim harba arayis ish. There's a lot of arayis. Shen beis shel yisoma misan that they will not be killed. However, uben noich musolen that they will. Ubal arayis nidan b'din Yisrael. Was boil arayis Yisrael din is nidan b'din Yisrael like we saw already. Bal arayis ben noich nidan b'din ben noich. V'anu ein lanu el nar marasa b'vad. I v'nechshav nami nechnas ol chuppah vo nivla. Apparently that should be a case also, as we saw, that they would get the Yisrael's death penalty. So Haitana Tana b'im Menashu di'emer kol misa hamar b'nei noich enu el chenek. The punishment is not chenek, idi cheneku, and therefore it's no different. So even though it's true they don't have this death penalty, but their death penalty is always chenek anyway. So therefore, this is the Yisrael's punishment is chenek. It doesn't really make it much difference. It's not shifting from saif to chenek. It's just chenek, and therefore that wouldn't for that we don't include that distinction. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's look at question 5. Be'elo rayas mishkachas ben noich nera b'din Yisrael kivan delesu dinim. What is by nar marasa? And the second is if he was boil and Ashes ish, but she was not nivel with her husband, she didn't have beer yet, she was only niknas le chuppah. TA 6. Tanya al shvichas damim kusi b'kusi b'Yisrael chayiv Yisrael. A kusi with a kusi, let's see, who kills another kusi, or a kusi kills Yisrael is chayiv. Yisrael b'kusi potter. Yisrael who kills a kusi is potter. Madua lo katani aser umutter. Why doesn't it say the language is mutter? Kedetani gabi gezel. And this I got correct, which is pretty good. Because, where am I? This is 6. As b'shvichas damim aser Yisrael b'kusi. By shvichas damim aser Yisrael b'kusi. The loy malin v'lo meridan. That it's Yisrael is not allowed to kill a kusi because lo meridan. We don't throw him into the pit, and therefore for that reason you can't use that language. Okay, that was TA 6 on Nun Zayin but Aleph, because Ein Malin, where is that? Right over here. Well, Malin the Ein Meridan, which is again is the key element is Ein Meridan. TA 6. Fine. Let's see. Alkin Yazov Ish. We didn't do that. TB 7. Be'el Orayis Mishkachs B'Noich Ner B'Dini Yisrael Kivon D'Leislahu Dinim, which is the exact same question as question 5. This is TB 7, and I wrote Naira Hamarasa Nichnas Chuppah Bo Nivla Ad Kan.